How's it going, guys? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to another Phil Talk Sports movie review. Joining me this time is PR52. Hank is here making his movie review debut, which really shocks me. I don't know how we haven't done this before, but it's good to see you as always, man, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Anytime there's a review of an Adam Sandler movie, everyone always used to tell me I look like Adam Sandler in some ways. So I once dressed up as Billy Madison for Halloween. So I got this shirt from Frank.
So you're clearly qualified. We got the right man for the job. When it hit me that we've never reviewed a movie, I reached out. I was like, "Hey, man, I know you're kind of taking a break from watching football this season and stuff. So like, whatever your favorite sports movie is, assuming we haven't done it, let's do it." And he instantly responded with Waterboy. And I said, "Perfect. Haven't done it. Love the movie. Let's do it." I think the perfect way to break into this, it must be your favorite because that's what I asked you. What makes this your favorite sports movie?
The reason why this is my favorite sports movie is because, first of all, it is so incredibly campy. Like, if you're looking at a sports movie that you know that in every single realm, probably outside of like Space Jam, Angels in the Outfield, and Air Bud, like this is a movie that wouldn't happen in real life. Like, it's just pure fiction and it's just pure hilarity. Like, in almost every scene, there is something that will make you laugh. And it is one of those movies that they're like a lot of comedy movies where you go through the entire movie and you're done laughing by like half the movie. This
Right.
one, it's just like there is some sort of laugh in every scene. And even if you have no sense of humor, you will laugh.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So for me, this might have been one of the first movies I bought on VHS. Like it was right around that time. This is to me, it's smack dab in what I'm going to call the Sandler can't miss era because this came out in 1998. Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore came out in 95 and 96. This movie's followed by Big Daddy, Little Nicky, and Mr. Deeds, and I'm missing a few in there, of course. But basically, from like Airheads from '94, which is the first Sandler movie I ever saw. He's not like the star, but he's like a supporting character, all the way up through now even like with only because people hate it. Sandler's in the point now. You either like him or you don't. I like Grown Ups. I like that he does movies with his friends. Like that doesn't bother me. Movies are meant to be enjoyed. So this is smack dab in the middle of it. He can't miss. He can do no wrong. This movie has an extra little like local lore for me because it was filmed in Orlando and DeLand. The two stadiums they use are the Citrus Bowl in Orlando and Spec Martin, which at the time was only DeLand High School because Stetson didn't have a football team, and now they do. They got it back in 2014, and I work games there, so I decided to wear the shirt for this. So every game I go to work, somebody has to bring up to someone they don't think would know that Waterboy was filmed here. It's talked about every time I go. We always joke that there needs to be a plaque on the side of the stadium somewhere. The Citrus Bowl would have been remodeled since then. But the Spec Martin is looked exactly the same. So the Mud Dogs Arena Stadium is the one in DeLand, and then the University of Louisiana and the bowl game are done at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. And then a bunch of the littler scenes are shot in towns between the two, basically. So this movie was shot all over Florida. So it ends a little bit of hometown flavor for me. To me, it's also like this movie's 90 minutes. I miss when funny movies were just 90 minutes and that was it. Like everybody makes a point to make their movies over 2 hours now. I don't always appreciate that. But yeah, this movie, it doesn't get old. It's probably one of the most rewatched movies, whether you wanted to or not. It's probably airs on, like we rewatched it for this. So we snuck it out or whatever. We tried to find it. But if you just left TNT on in your house long enough during a week, it probably airs at some point. So like even to this day, over 20 years later, this movie's not hard to find. People are still enjoying it to this day.
So you have been to the Bourbon Bowl?
I have, yes. Been to the Bourbon
Yeah,
Bowl, been to the whatever you want to call the 5-time champion. We'll talk about that moment later. But yeah, I'm going to the Bourbon Bowl this Saturday, actually, believe it or not. So yeah, pretty excited. So let's start at the top here. You guys that have watched these reviews before probably know the drill by now. I will admit this movie kind of, I have a template that I walk through with this, and this kind of tests it a little bit, and I'll bring that up when it does. But let's start with the 3,000 foot view. The overall theme of this movie? What would you say it is for Waterboy?
I feel like the overall theme from this movie is you can't judge a book by its cover. Obviously, the movie starts out and Bobby Boucher is like this kind of outsider, introverted water boy who, all he does is he wants to make sure that you have high quality H2O. And then he gets fired from his first football team because the big bald player spit in the cooler, and then he, lashes out, and then he gets fired. Oh no, he doesn't lash out. He gets the cooler thrown on his head.
Yeah, and the
That's
team
exactly
beats
what
him up.
happens. And then
Yeah,
he's causing an issue, and then he gets fired because he was supposed to be fired the season at the end of the last season, but the assistant coach didn't have the heart to fire him. And then he
plus,
ends
he
up
admits to him. He said, "Coach, like he's doing a fantastic job. Why would
yeah,
we fire this guy?" Which has always been my biggest thing. Like, I know the coach is an asshole, but it's like you have to admit he's doing an amazing job. Like, no one is going to be a better water boy than this guy.
exactly. And he takes so much care in his job. Like most like hydration specialists would be like, oh, just give him some Gatorade. Like Bobby Boucher is like he's heating up the water to like sterilize it, and then he like learns how to like visualize and hit people, and then he becomes like this big college football player at this really small university that ends up winning the Bourbon Bowl. And so it's like a double uh, don't judge a book by its cover stories, because the team really sucked without the water boy, and then once he played for their team, they were amazing. So I guess it's those two, on top of like the fact that really Bobby Boucher was like the only good player on this team, because they lost like 26 consecutive games. Like they didn't win a single game since 94. And like you
Yeah.
said, the movie came out in 98. So they were a pretty bad team without him.
Yeah, before I give my answer, you can always categorize sports movies into like, I'll take like a major league, right? Like the team is a real team, the Cleveland Indians, and they play real teams. They play the White Sox, they play the Yankees. And then there's movies like this where all the teams are fictional. Like they're pretty generic. They play like a West Mississippi and a Central Missouri, or like they're all generic enough. And then there's ones where the team you are supposed to root for is fictional, but they play real teams, right? Like trying to think in the program, if you've ever seen that, that came out in '94. It's a fictional team, but they play like Iowa and Mississippi State and like real schools. Does do you have a preference in your sports movies? Do you like the all fiction? Do you like the mixture of fiction teams with real teams, or just real teams and you tell a story?
Honestly, I'm someone who it doesn't really matter one way or another. It doesn't matter to me if my team is fictional and they're playing against a real team, or my team is real and they're playing against FCS Northwest or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't really matter in my opinion. It's all good, whatever is chosen.
Like I generally like Major League is probably my favorite sports movie, and that's all real. But luckily, like I had a neutral opinion of the Cleveland Indians before that movie came out. If the movie's about the New York Mets, maybe I don't like it because I don't like the Mets, right? So you always run that risk. Like Yankee fans probably don't like Major League, right? Because they're the bad guys in that. I would hope that they could see past it for genius, but like you run into that issue, and then you could also run into that if it's like your fictional team plays the Chicago Bears. If you're a Bears fan, maybe that affects you. So like it's probably safer to go all fiction, but there's examples of all of them done right. I was just like, anytime a new sports movie comes out, I always look for, all right, which bucket is this in going into it? But as far as my overall themes, an easy one, I got two. The easy one is like clearly an underdog story, right? For both Bobby and the team and the coach, really, all three of them. And then all three of them also deal with a lot of bullying. I think that's almost the biggest one because Bobby is bullied at his original team. The Fonz, who's the coach of the Mud Dogs, has been basically his whole life bullied by Coach Boyu at the other school. and then just, the team gets bullied on the field because they're terrible, as you mentioned. So just a lot of like overcoming bullying and making yourself better than people thought you were. So I think like bullying is a big, like, you stand up to it, like when maybe it's not always a good thing, but like when the teacher makes fun of him for like mama said this, mama, and he tackles him, like, to him that was him standing up for himself. So like there's kind of an overlying thing of bullying, I think, for this too. That's a good one to bring up for sure. Let's jump to favorite and least favorite characters, excluding Bobby, because obviously that's supposed to be I assume that's who everyone's favorite's supposed to be. So with him out, hopefully that wasn't who you wrote down. We can do least favorite first, however you want to do it.
I'll do favorite first. Mama is my favorite character. Kathy Bates did an amazing job with Mama. I don't know anyone else who could have played her. Like every single line lands to perfection. Like she's supposed to play this super southern uptight mother who is afraid that she's going to lose her son to foosball. And that's why you're not going to play foosball, Bobby. And it just feels like anytime a character tries to attack her, she has like this perfect like deflection. Like one of my favorite all-time scenes is when he brings Vicky Valancourt to their house and she's trying to like publicly embarrass Bobby so that Vicky won't want to date him anymore. And she's like, his feet smell, and she's like, a man's foot is supposed to smell, and then she's like, he wears deputy dog pajamas, and she's like, well, I find him sexy, and he's like, look at that sheet, he peed on it. It's just
first round knockout with the sheet.
Perfection. She's got the perfect amount of like cattiness. She's got a goal in her life, and it is to make sure that Bobby stays with her only because she has issues with like people leaving her because Bobby's dad left her. And she's just like, everything he tries to do, anything outside of like him staying at home with her and her brushing his hair is the devil.
Right.
Like everything is the and the way she says foos, like she doesn't even say football. She says foosball. Like it's not even like, I remember when I first watched the movie when she would say foosball. Like I knew she was saying football, but I didn't know what foosball was. And then I went to like this like arcade center and it had a foosball table and it's like, do you want to play foosball? And I was like, this isn't foosball. This is like some weird soccer game. I don't know.
So if Bobby came home with a foosball table, do you think she'd come up with a ridiculous name for that since foosball's already taken? Yeah.
She'd probably
she calls that football.
She'd probably be like spinball or something like that.
Good point. All right, least favorite. Who you got?
I would say my least favorite character is a super obscure character. And I will say that when this character says their lines, I do think it's funny. But is the guy who is in the crowd who he's like, he just tackled him like Joe Montana. He's like, Joe Montana's a quarterback, you idiot. He's like, I meant Joe Montana. And it's like,
everything he says is wrong. Everything,
But like the line lands, but I'm always super like the movie could have done without that character, in my opinion.
That's fair. And we do have like a best / most impactful side character. And I didn't pick them, but like they're memorable. So like I thought about it. I didn't pick them, but I did have them in the discussion. They were in the running.
It's either Rob Schneider's cut his head off or we suck again character.
You can do it, guy. Yeah.
Or it's the kicker.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know what his name is. Believe me, he probably could go throughout the whole movie without even knowing his name. But he's the first guy who's like, you can use my, like, he's the only guy who's actually nice to him.
Right.
He's like, you can have my helmet when I'm not playing, because when I'm kicking, you're not on the field.
Right. Which they must have figured that out eventually, because he goes into like block a kick at one point, and they do like the fake field goal. So clearly someone else.
Eventually, he does get his own helmet.
Yeah, once he's like star of the team or whatever.
Yeah.
So for favorite character, this was hard for me. Like, it's funny that you picked Mama as your favorite. I almost put her as my least favorite, not because she doesn't do the role perfectly, but it's like, what a toxic woman, right?
Yeah.
Like your son clearly has issues and disabilities, and he's trying to make the most out of his life, and you just like lie after lie. Like, I invented electricity. Ben Franklin's the devil. Like, you can't even give electricity to somebody else, and like you understand why. Like, the husband left her. Clearly, she never got over that. Leaving her home all day with no one to talk to except Steve, the donkey that lives in the living room,
Steve.
is a whole deal. So, like, I wanted to pick her, but, like, she's just too funny, even though she's extremely talky, so I couldn't for least favorite. Um, so for least favorite, I'm going with the quarterback. Is first they call him Gee. I don't know if that's short for
Gee.
something, but
Yeah.
he's the last guy to come around, and I don't think he completes a pass the entire movie. So like, how are you going to be mad at Bobby or anybody else? He does catch a pass on like a trick play, so stick tap for that. But like when they lose the game because he like flips the ball back to the guy, and they like even though he intercepted it, he could have ended the game. And
Yeah.
he's like, "You just lost the game for a shithead." It's like, well, Gee, how about you like complete a curl route and maybe we'd have a chance. So he
Yeah.
like he eventually comes around and he's like, "You're the heart and soul of this team," and it's like, "Yeah, damn right he is." But
Like,
for 58 of the 90 minutes, he's just a complete shithead, and he's terrible. Like, you can only be that a shithead to someone if you're like the star. If he was like the
he's,
one star guy and they were terrible, maybe. But
he
like, I
is
always
like
thought that was funny.
he's like the Nathan Peterman of college quarterbacks.
Right. And
Like
he's dare
like
to say
like
something to somebody else.
like their first win, they win the game like 12-10 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like kicking field goals, kicking field goals, kicking. Yeah, I don't even know. Like they had like the worst. They're like LSU from like the early 2000s, like
Yeah.
barely scoring any points. Yeah, he's. I would say that he is one of the worst characters in the movie, but he plays it just like every other character in that movie. He just plays it so over the top.
Yeah,
Like he
everybody's
just
like
oozes
backwoods,
asshole.
just annoying, or not even annoying, but just like he plays it great. I don't think anybody doesn't play their role great in this. Like, even the kicker you mentioned, he's just like the sweet Southern guy.
Yeah,
Like when he's like, my mama says that too, and he's got the gap in his
do we
tooth, and
have
you
the
realize
same
like, oh,
mama?
these guys are gonna be buddies.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's great. And then for favorite, this was really hard because you can't pick Bobby, obviously. For the relevance of the movie, I think I have to go with Vicky Valancourt because like the movie doesn't happen without her. He doesn't get the confidence to go and go to another team, to go to school. Like, even though they're not like, he's not smart enough to know that they're like together for a lot of it. Like, she still makes it all happen. And
Mm.
anyone that's willing to kill like 3 teachers while you take a test, like, that's love right there. So I got to give it to her for sure.
Yeah. The best is when she tries to kill the bald guy at the end of
Yeah,
the movie. She like takes a knife and goes right, and she's gonna cut his head off. And then when she's like talking to Lynn Swan, and it's like she's like, they're gonna win like this.
30 to
That's
27.
what
Yeah,
it's gonna be. And he's like, okay.
yeah,
He's like, she like says this absolutely ridiculous score, and she's like, that's what it's gonna be. And then
yeah,
it ends up being that
yeah.
score.
He's like, oh, that's interesting. How'd you come up with that guess? And she's just could not be more insulted. Like, it's not a guess; it's what it's gonna be. It's like, shit. Okay, like, yeah, like this is a guy that played in like the most dangerous era of the NFL, but you've never seen Lynn Swan more terrified than with this like 5'4" woman in front of him. And she's just great in a lot of movies. Like, she talk about range. Like, in the same like 2-3 years, she made this in American History X. Like,
Yeah,
you couldn't be too
yeah.
farther apart. So what range
But
she's got
but
for sure.
but closer together because she plays like a punk in both movies,
Yeah, yeah,
essentially.
that's
She
true. It's
plays
like
like a white supremacist, and then she plays like someone who like goes to jail all the time and
right, right.
somehow gets out every time, like super quickly. Like
My,
who's paying her bail?
my favorite line of hers is when he's at like the thing with the original LT's like camp, and then he's leaving, and she's sitting there, and he's like, "Oh, Vicky, what are you doing here?" And she couldn't say it more casually. She's just like, "I don't know, thinking about stealing LT's Porsche over there," like just without a care in the world. And she ends up doing it, and they drive home together, which was funny. But yeah, she. I don't know. The movie still works. I'm not gonna take it that far, but like, I don't know how well it works without her.
Mm.
You know, it's just perfect in every sense. Side characters, this took me the longest because I don't know where I want to draw the line at side characters because it's like Bobby and everybody else. So you could either say like Mama's not a side character. The coaches aren't a side character. So I had two and the ultimate honorable mention, and it might actually be the winner. Farmer Fran, the assistant coach, who yeah, which fun fact, the way he is able to talk like that, basically talk normal without moving your tongue. That's how we came up with that. So I go with him, and then I also have the you can't do it guy. Rob Schneider's like,
Yeah.
he's got like 4-5 second scenes where he yells.
Oh no, we suck again.
And that anything he says in our year 2024, people still quote to this day. So when you talk impactful, I got to give it to him.
Yeah.
But the ultimate side character, because he is in one scene, is Mr. Paul White, aka Captain Insano, on the TV screen.
He's technically in two scenes because he shows up at the end of the movie, and like,
oh, is he at the wedding? I never noticed.
He shows up like around the time where Mama is like going through her like mental depression or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Like on TV or something like that. And there's like a part where Bobby Boucher is like upset at the screen or something like that.
Okay. But he only has one speaking, back and forth or whatever. And, played by actual pro wrestler Paul White, aka the Big Show, multiple time world champion and all that. For him to show up in this and like, it's almost really sweet for a minute because he's like, oh, that's, the kid wants to be my water boy. How old are you, kid? 11, 12? And he's like,
I'm 34.
And then they just start laughing.
And
he hits him with that guy's still a virgin.
It's Chris Farley's brother, too.
Oh, doing the interview.
The interviewer is Chris Farley's brother. And they just start laughing at each other.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what sport do you like? Wrestling. It's like, who's your favorite wrestler? Well, until recently, Captain Insano.
Yeah. Even though he was discourteous to me recently, I'm going to say Captain Insano.
I'm gonna say Captain Insano.
Yeah. So it's just, and like that era of wrestling, I will say, like that character didn't exist, but it totally could have. It was the most 1994 like character they could have came up with. So just gold stars for all of that. Favorite and least favorite scene. What do you got?
It's a tie between this scene where they're at the party and like they just won their first football game and Bobby shows up and he's like, make sure you don't tell my mom that I'm here. And it's like, I don't think anyone's talking to your mom.
Right.
Like, and then he's like, two girls approach him and they're like, hey, are
you seeing anybody?
Are you seeing anybody? He's like, I see a lot of people. And he's like, are you seeing any girls? And he's like, I see a lot of girls. He's like, I also see a lot of guys. And then like one girl leaves.
And the other girl's into it. Yeah.
And then the other girl's like, I think that's sexy.
Yeah.
It's like, and then the other one it's the classic classroom scene where he's arguing with the professor that looks like Colonel Sanders.
Right.
And he's like, well, why is an alligator so aggressive? And he's like, because they've got they've got a toothpaste, but no toothbrush. That's what Mama says. And he's like, Mama's wrong. He's like, and like the guy like raises his hand and he's like, it's because they have an enlarged medulla oblongata. And he's like, this guy's got an enlarged medulla oblongata. And he's like, it's not a medulla oblongata.
My favorite part of that is when he's given the medulla oblongata thing. They go back to Bobby and he's like rolling his eyes. He's like, what a silly answer. Like that's clearly not the answer. Like
when he's like, I know the answer, and he's like, raise your hand, and he's like
beautiful.
He's like, why are you in this class? It's a really hard class. And he's like, it's got a really nice view.
It's the water fountain or the thing in the pond. Yeah. So those are favorites. What about least favorites?
I would go as far to say probably my least favorite scene is like I hated the backstory of this move of like Coach Klein and the Coach Bo Yu or whatever it is. I didn't like that backstory. Like where he's like, oh, they're both trying to get the job and Coach Klein wrote the plays and the only thing the other guy did was like do the practices, but like this guy made the plays and you're just going to like steal the playbook, and he's like, basically, I would have just tried to get another job, like a job somewhere else, like with your playbook. Like you
Well,
just gave this dude your playbook,
yeah.
like your genius, like cuckoo playbook. Like, are you serious?
Well, I think the concept, I agree. Like that whole thing is very, and again, that goes back to the bullying thing. But like, apparently, when he like muscled the playbook, like it did something to his psyche, and he couldn't come up with more plays or something. Like that's
No, I
the
know, but
story they
like,
tell.
but why are you gonna give like why are you gonna give him the playbook? Like what? Like I feel like it's
Well, he
like,
threatens him. He goes, "I'm gonna have this book one way or the other." So it's
well, yeah,
easier if
but
you
if
just
he
give it
does,
to me. Yeah.
but so what? I'd be like, fire me. I'll be writing plays for another team.
Well, not everyone's as confident as you, Hank.
I
Clearly,
guess
Coach
not.
Klein, but I mean, I agree. It's not the most enjoyable part of the movie. I guess it's like, does this movie work if those two coaches don't have a prior? I mean, it could have been as simple as like we were both up for a job and he got it, and then I
Mhm.
ended up here. Like they didn't have to. Yeah, you
Like
could do it without
he
the
got the
playbook for
job
sure.
and I didn't, and then I
Now I'm
lost
here,
all my confidence.
right? So you didn't have to do the bullying part,
And
but
and
again,
then
maybe it's supposed to
and the
go
way that
across
they
well.
were dressed is like very like, not everybody from the 70s had like that huge afro and a mustache. Like,
But how else are you going to know this flashbacks in the 70s?
well, you can like just by the way, like the things that they're wearing, but it's like,
I
I don't
love when he doesn't get the job and he's like on the phone with his grandma
know. It's
and he's wearing
unplugged.
heels, but then the phone's unplugged, and the only two things that are in color in the flashback is the green notebook and the red high heels. Like
Yeah,
it's annoying. Like it's almost worth it to keep it in for those two things
that's
there.
true. That is funny, but I don't know. I just didn't like the back. I felt like the backstory was just lazily put together.
So for me, the favorite is the once Bobby's like rolling, and it's like you got to love a good like we're winning games montage, and I think this does it as well as anything. And I love the like when they finally get out of the montage and they got the announcers and it's like, oh, he's got 18 sacks today or whatever it is, and they do the
16,
slow
yeah.
motion of him running, and they're just like, wow, there's a lot of pain and shame behind those eyes, and, and they're playing like this is my theory. They're using do you ever see it's like the trash picking, field goal kicking Philadelphia phenomenon? It's like an old Disney movie. This guy so the Eagles jerseys in that movie, I swear, are recycled from that old Disney movie because that came out first.
Yeah,
That's just a theory. But in
yeah,
that scene, and they're like, "All right, it's 3rd and 8. Good news, everybody! The first-string quarterback doesn't have a broken neck." Like
yeah.
they're hitting you with these body shots of comedy through this whole 2-3 minute scene, and that's definitely one of my favorites. Um, and then for least favorite, it is the when Mama's in the hospital and all the community rally around him with candles, and he wants nothing to do with it. He tells him to go home, and like Mama's pretending to be asleep, and it's just like, how long are you gonna let this go? Like I already talked about what a toxic woman she is, and like she ends up coming around, but like
Yeah.
the moment when he has to turn the whole town away is kind of heartbreaking in the sense, you know.
Yeah,
So
that was ridiculous. He's
yeah,
like, "No, go home. I'm not gonna play
she
football."
can't hear you because she's unconscious. So, all right. So I'm gonna do this one out of order just because it makes more sense talking scenes already. When people bring up like, if you say the movie Waterboy to somebody, what's the most memorable scene? What is this movie most known for? I have two, so let's see if any of them match up.
Um, like I would say like the one scene at the very end when Farmer Fran is like holding his nipples.
That's the
He's
most
like,
memorable.
and pro- um, probably like I know I've seen her boobies and I love them too. That
That's
one, yeah.
perfect. This is water from a glacier in
We're in
Alaska.
Alaska.
So we mentioned the Aldula Oblongata scene. I think because like anybody born in the '90s knows that fact simply because of this movie.
Mhm.
And some people don't even know how they know that fact, but it's because of this
Most
movie.
people don't know what a medulla oblongata is. They just know the answer. It's like a
Well,
cell phone. You know that it works, but you don't know how it works.
it's also like you know how to get to your friend's house, but you don't know their address. It's one
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
deals. But
yeah.
as we know, it's the portion of the brain that manages aggression. We
Mhm.
know that. And then the other one, it's funny. Like I had to put it in this part. I'm surprised it didn't come up yet. It's the water versus Gatorade
Oh yeah.
hallucination when the coach is water
Water
sucks. It really,
sucks.
so
It
that
really, really
I
sucks.
think that symbolizes this movie. If you only get a minute to like sell somebody on watching this movie, I think that's the clip you show them. So I think I'm going with that one for sure.
Well, a lot of them was like whenever he's visualizing someone's face, it's just like think about it. Like this was 1998, like before like super modern day like AI CGI, just being able to like superimpose things on people's necks. Like
They kind of
I don't know how
flex
they did
their
that.
they kind of flex their production muscles doing it
Yeah,
as much as they did in that movie. And
yeah.
then like the only other guy, well, the coach gets to do it. He makes Coach Bayou look like a baby at one
Mhm.
point, and then the kicker makes the ball look like a Klansman.
Yeah,
So it's funny the people that liked Bobby for Bobby get this superpower that
yeah.
nobody else gets. So that's up there for sure too. All right. So what piece of memorabilia would you most want from this movie?
I would say that the piece of memorabilia that I would want from, and honestly, like it's not what you're thinking of. It is like the mold infested bucket that he used to give his players before Bobby showed up. He's like, I can't afford you. I just give my players that. He's like, I will work for free. Just make sure you never give them that again.
Do not give the contents of that jug to another human person. Is how he
Another
breaks it
human
down.
person.
That is, yeah. I had a million. You could have said the water from Alaska. I think it's easy to say like, oh, a helmet or a Bourbon Bowl jersey, right? That could the airboat would have even been,
Yeah,
how cool
yeah.
is that? But I think, and we've talked about how we don't love the storyline of it, but like the Green Notebook, like if you
Mhm.
had that in a nice little case with the Waterboy 1998, like I think
Yeah,
I'm going with the Notebook would actually
that
be
would be
great.
cool too.
Yeah, and I
But it's
wonder
like,
if that was
but I feel
truly
like
like
this one no one would want. So like I would get it, you
it'll be
know?
easy to get, yeah,
It
for
would
sure.
be easy to get.
Or maybe like the Mud Dog like mascot head or something like that
Yeah.
would be, or Steve if Steve's still kicking. Like
Steve
horses aren't cheap, so or I'm sorry, donkeys
or
aren't cheap.
that alligator, that like small alligator that Vicky eats.
Oh yeah,
Like one of the first scenes.
I mean, does
Oh,
LT's Porsche count? Because like hell yeah, I'll take that.
I guess it could.
Yeah,
I guess it could. Oh, one scene just came into my head. Remember the scene where they're eating the snake
yeah.
and the coach is like,
What part am I
"What
about?
part of the snake am I eating?" And she's like, "I don't know, the knees or something or the legs."
And coach is a pro. He's been on recruiting trips, so he's all for it. He's like, oh, the knee, great. Like he's
Yeah,
all for it.
great.
Good stuff. So one thing I do want to bring up, it's kind of in like I don't know if this is a plot hole, but like I don't think we can finish this without describing like clearly Coach Bayou, even though he stole his offense, the dude is smart because to do the whole we're just gonna kneel the ball and punt and make their offense beat us is actually genius. Like it's not often the bad guy in a movie like this is actually that smart. They're usually outsmarted very easily. Everything goes according to plan. Like that was a true coach's duel. That like could you imagine if something like that happened in a real like it's never going to be at a scale where like the one linebacker is the only guy that can do anything on this team. But to me, the longer that time goes, the more genius I feel that move actually was.
I feel like that was like a very Bill Belichickian move.
Yeah.
Like usually coaches in movies like this just play dirty, but he
Right.
actually did play smart. Like
I mean, he tried the dirty too. He tried to put the one lineman in as like a full. He tried all that, but then
but
afterwards, he
only
actually had
but
an idea.
only but only dirty is what I'm saying.
Right.
Like this was like a very like I'm going to do a delay of game so that more time can come off the clock. Or
Yeah.
I'm going to do a false start so that more time can come off the clock.
Or
Kind of
like
move.
on the
Like
last play of the game, I'm just gonna let everybody hold because the game can end on a hold. It can't end on a defensive play. Like if the Ravens did that, but that
yeah.
was a thing in the Super Bowl, I think too.
Or
Um,
like the game can end on intentional grounding.
yeah. So yeah, it's one of those.
But don't tell the refs from that Oklahoma State Central Michigan game. They didn't know that.
Is there any other kind of? Oh, this is my other plot point. You know, the other team, the University of Louisiana, they're like national champions. They're essentially LSU without being LSU. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they're using Lafayette's logos and jerseys and stuff in this from back then. But
Mhm.
they're like national championship or bust, right? He's trying to get his sixth or his fifth or whatever. The Mud Dogs lose. I think they lose 2 games or 1 game.
I think they lose one.
Okay, so they lose the first one that they could have won.
They could have won if Bobby didn't throw the other
Team the
team
ball
player,
back.
the number 62 or whatever,
62,
or
yeah.
69 or whatever, who like insulted his mom.
Yeah.
And
So
the only reason why he did that was because he insulted his mom.
Right. My question is, was this the de facto? Because remember, in '94, this is back before like the BCS. This is like just the team that's number one at the end of the year, based on all the is the national champ. So was this game the de facto national championship? Because they never really bring it up that way. They just talk about like the Bourbon Bowl. So like, did they? They're clearly a lower level team. So is this the equivalent of like 11-1 UCF in 2014 playing like 12-2 Baylor, you know, an American Conference team versus a Big 12? Like, is it like they didn't have a great year and they had a great year, so they're able to meet up because they're like because they're not like conference opponents or anything?
It's either that or it's the that one time Notre Dame was 12-0 and Alabama was 11-1.
Right.
After losing one game to A&M, or LSU is perfect and Alabama is 11-1 after losing to LSU.
Right.
So it's very possible. It's like I guess the fact that these two teams are completely fictional, you don't really know
the bias
what the situation is. I think that the what was the bad team called again?
The Mud Dogs.
The Mud Dogs were the good team.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're University of Louisiana. I forget their mascot, but yeah.
Yeah,
UL.
I feel like they were the number one team in the whole NCAA, but they just happened to play their bowl game against like a number 8 school or something like that, or like a number 7 school that just happened to have one loss.
Right.
Their wins were just so impressive because everyone, Bobby Boucher being so amazing, ranked them super high. Like, remember, Michigan tried to emulate this with their towel boy who caught a pass and almost got decapitated.
Which is funny enough, the only real team mentioned in this movie. It is funny that's
no, there are others. Iowa is
Iowa in this? Okay, yeah.
Iowa's in it. There's a bunch of like Eastern Kentucky or whatever.
Yeah, which may or may not be real. I'd have to double check those.
I was definitely in the movie. I specifically remember them being in the. I don't know who else was in them, but I think it's interesting that like I was playing against some
FCS at home too in Louisiana. Yeah, that
doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna go at this from a different angle for plot holes. How in the world did Coach Klein not get some sort of punishment, some sort of recruiting violation for recruiting somebody who never even really applied to the university? And on top of that, how does Bobby get into one of the classes if like he doesn't actually attend? Like, does he attend the university?
I think so.
Or is he like okay, if he attends the university, obviously if like you have to get accepted into the university and they do like a bunch of background checks. This isn't like and why was the NCAA so like it took until the bowl game in order to be like he's not actually a high school student.
Well, I think Coach Bayou
doesn't actually exist.
Coach Bayou did the digging necessary because, like, how often are you following a random? Oh, granted, once he got like famous or whatever, like well known, but like, there's not a spotlight on this little school in Louisiana before he gets.
There isn't, but like at the same time, like the NCAA can't be that dumb. Like maybe they were going after like some other school like all
Yeah.
season, but like I just don't understand how, number one, that would just go ahead and fall so far down the cracks. Like, does the university really have like that low of a
Like a
of
profile.
like an acceptance standard that they can't like, maybe this is maybe it's because I went to college like 10 years later or
Mhm.
12 years later. Maybe in the age of the internet it's harder to do something like that. But like the fact that the coach fudged all this stuff and he ended up not even getting he didn't even get in trouble in the movie.
Yeah.
Like not
Yeah,
once does he get in trouble in the whole movie.
that's true. I mean, it's probably, I'll say this, it's probably easier to pull this off in 1994 than it would be now, obviously. That's for sure. So like to sneak a guy, like clearly he gets a scholarship because he's not paying for college because he don't have money and mom ain't giving him money. So clearly
Mhm.
it's a scholarship situation. I think it's the school is so small time that it just went under the radar until the coach went digging. Because he knows the guy and he's like, I
Well,
know damn well
my
that guy
my
didn't go to
question
high
is,
school.
why didn't he do it before that?
I
Like, why
didn't
didn't
think
he do it once he know like they're in the same state? Like they're two universities that are very close to each other in
it seemed like he didn't care until they got matched up in the bowl. And he's like, all right, now this is my problem. I'm shutting it down. But
gotcha.
yeah, great point. All great points. Like, yeah, where's the NCAA sanctions that they do mention this is the first ever Bourbon Bowl, so that's you don't have to worry about like the history of this
Mhm.
thing or whatever. So that's definitely an option there. We've only had one primarily defensive player win the Heisman. We may have another one this year with
This
Travis
year.
Hunter. In 1994, would you think that Bobby Boucher had rights to the Heisman or at least to go to New York? I think he's definitely going to New York with those
He
stats.
had 16 sacks in one game.
Yeah, shattering the
Like
old record of
guys have
7.
16 sacks in a season,
Right.
and that's good.
And it seems like he kind of did that every game. So yeah,
Yeah.
if he's not winning because of like
No,
small time,
he's getting the Heisman.
yeah,
Unless the only way he's not getting a Heisman is if like Bailey Zappi is also in the league and he's throwing 61 touchdowns in a season.
I would have to see Michigan's Towel Boy stats too to compare.
Yeah. One catch,
Yeah, one catch, one depletion.
one injury.
All right. Any
Yeah.
last thoughts before we get out of here?
I feel like this movie was the first of its kind and has really never been made again, in the sense of it's a very not serious sports movie. Like we're used to like a lot of really serious sports movies where like the main character is a likable guy but has like some sort of an issue that's like stopping them from being super successful, and then they eventually break out from that and then they become successful and maybe they win, maybe they lose. But with the Waterboy, it's like Bobby Boucher is just a super likable character the whole movie, and it's super campy, and there are like literal sports figures that are all throughout this movie. Like Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher
Yep.
make an appearance in this movie. Lynn Swan is in this movie multiple times. Dan Patrick, who used to be on ESPN and is now on like NFL Network. I think Rich Eisen might be in the movie. I
Yep.
could be wrong about that. Dan Fouts is in the movie. Um, what's his name from Lee Corso makes an appearance in the
Mm-hmm.
movie.
LT.
Yeah, LT yeah, makes an appearance in the movie. Joe Montana's name makes an appearance in the movie. So it's just like it was just really cool that Adam Sandler was able to get all of these people together to help him make a movie and just make it like not only is it campy, but it's also super raunchy in a lot of areas. Like, when are you ever going to get a movie where, like, excuse my French, like a character gets called a needle dick, and
Yeah.
then there's like a vision he has where the guy's like, needle dick, needle dick, needle dick. Like, You're never gonna get that
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, this is a movie that definitely never gets made again. It's in the Billy Madison category where like that character just can't be done again. The R word gets thrown around a handful of times in this
Yeah.
movie. And granted, we grew up in the era where like that was just an insult. You weren't really talking about someone
Yeah,
with a disability.
exactly.
But it
Exactly.
doesn't happen again. I'll close on this. What we know about Adam Sandler now is he is like Mr. Hoops. The dude loves basketball.
Mm.
And up until recently, he's never made a basketball movie. So it's interesting that his like foray into sports movies, you're
He kinda
surprised he didn't go
has.
basketball first, you
He
know?
kinda has. He's made a few.
He made
Um,
that one on Netflix,
it was, yeah, he made well,
Hustle, right? Yeah,
do we is Uncut Gems considered a basketball movie in some ways? I know he doesn't play basketball. I
right.
know it's not really a comedy movie. Um,
But what I mean is like in his
Eight
early days, he didn't. It took him.
Eight Crazy Nights
Mm,
has, like, basketball elements to it, and
right.
then the other one was, the one with, Kevin James and Chris Rock and
Grown Ups has.
where they're all on a basketball
Yeah,
team.
yeah. I guess
So,
what I'm
I mean,
saying is for
it's
him to
not a
make.
movie about basketball, but basketball is definitely in it.
Right. I'm just surprised for him to make a full blown football movie. He didn't try to make a full blown basketball movie. Granted, you can't really do a Waterboy situation with basketball, but it
Mm.
just surprised me that back then, he couldn't miss with his movies, and he went football
Uh,
instead. About maybe just the opportunity was there and he took it.
one thing is I'm really surprised with this movie that, like, I don't know, whenever I've met athletes who are, like, in college, they were all, like, super nice people, and I just c maybe it was because it was when the movie came out, but I just can't envision, like, athletes treating a person like that, you
I mean, I,
know?
I think it was from the era of like the jocks or bullies, right? And
Yeah,
like
but, like, I feel like once you hit college, like,
that
not
goes away.
everyone's, like, a jerk anymore, like, most of those guys are like Rob Gronkowski, where they're, like, not as they're more like tool bags instead of, like,
But when you
jerks.
haven't won a game in 4 years, you're gonna be a little grouchy.
But he also gets made fun of on the good team, though.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like my question is, like, I don't know, like, I feel like in today's era, like, the anti-bullying thing would just shut that down. Like, I feel like people have enough of a thought process where they'll keep that to themselves and just tell their friends in, like, secret, you know?
They'd all be like the one coach. It's like, no, he actually does a great job. Like the
Yeah.
closest thing, like Florida State used to have a ball boy. He was a redhead. He had a big red beard. I didn't have a disability or anything, but like they called him Red Lightning because he was always
Yeah.
just boom getting the ball. And like Florida State loved him. He ended up working for the Falcons, and I think he came back. And
Mm,
it's like people just gravitated over this guy that's like busting his ass to work on the sideline, and that
mm.
would be today. Like people would love the water guy that took waterboying that.
Like,
But he'd have his own E60 episode, you
they
know?
would probably, like, make a College Game Day directly towards that person, and they'd be like he's
He'd
like,
be kicking
"This
the
is
field
me,
goal
I'm
with
the water
McAfee.
boy, and this is
Yeah,
what I do." It's
yeah,
like, "This is my mama, she hates foosball," and she's
yeah,
like, "Foosball's the devil."
yeah. Yeah, he'd be kicking the field goal with McAfee on
Yeah,
game day for sure.
right.
But yeah, Hank, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time. I'm really glad that we got to do your favorite sports movie, and I look forward to doing more with you in the future. So
Of
thanks again,
course,
man.
dude. Of course,
All right,
man. This was so much fun.
all right, so you hit me up with the one you want to do next. I'll take requests moving forward. All right.
Alright, alright.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for watching. Everybody enjoy. Go get yourself some high quality H2O and have yourself a great night. Take care.